Hello, everyone. Welcome to Training Thursdays with Stoplight Customer Success Team. My name's Cheryl, and along with my colleague Amy, we will be your hosts for today's training session. Just a few quick comments about today's webinar and the logistics of that webinar. Be sure to post your questions in the Zoom webinar Q&A window, as we will have a few people monitoring those to answer the questions as they are asked. We will not be answering questions from the chat session within the Zoom, so please make sure that you post them, and you can find those buttons at the bottom of your screen. So during the tour of the workspace today, we will also be posting a few of the product documentation links in that chat Zoom. So we invite you to click on those bookmarks, click on those links and bookmark them. Depending upon your specific use case for those features, you can take a look at those links to the documentation a little bit later. For the recorded version of the training Stoplight, you can find the posted links in the video description below. The purpose of today's training is to review some of the key Stoplight concepts and hierarchies as we walk through the administrative perspective of the Stoplight user interface. And I will be sharing the starting part of the session today with a quick overview of how Stoplight platform can assist you and your organization with your API development needs. And then I'll review a few key concepts and hierarchies within that platform. From there, Amy will introduce the Stoplight Workspace UI, review all of the administrative features and settings within the workspace, and then she'll give you a quick peek at the Stoplight Studio user interface as well. So before we get started, let's quickly review a few key features. Stoplight can help you and your organization enhance your API development processes. Stoplight's API design features allow you to develop quality APIs with a collaborative approach to an API design first philosophy. Create and prototype your APIs using an intuitive visual editor for open API specifications, and you can create your APIs in line with industry best practices. With Stoplight's API mocking features, you can instantly create a mock version of your API based on your open API specification. This allows you to visualize and get feedback on your API designs before spending time on back-end services development. API mocking allows your front-end client application developers and back-end service development teams to develop their projects in parallel. Within Stoplight's API documentation features, you can provide a top-notch development experience for internal and external consumers automatically generated from your open API files. Help internal and external users discover, learn, and integrate with your APIs quickly by publishing interactive API documentation, tutorials, and code samples that are always up to date. Stoplight's governance features allows you to govern your APIs at scale with an always in sync central repository of API designs, schemas, and API documentation. Easily share, apply, and enforce standards across all of your API designs to provide consistency, reusability, and better governance within your API program. Utilize Stoplight's public style guides to leverage sets of curated API design rules from top companies around security and design themes. Using a recently available proposals feature, you can now see recent API design changes at a glance and keep track of the projects across your Get Connected workspace. Proposals allows you to quickly understand how an API has changed over time, highlight breaking changes, find changes more easily in Stoplight. And now that we're familiar with some of the key features of Stoplight, let's transition over to the key concepts of Stoplight. So before we go into the tour of the workspace, let's discuss a few key concepts and hierarchies that'll help you better understand the Stoplight user experience. One of the important concepts to understand within Stoplight is the concept of roles. So while workspace roles are focused on accessing for managing settings and changes within the workspace level, which is found in your Members tab, projects and teams roles are focused on a level of access within the individual projects. I'm not going to dive too deep into those specifications today within the workspace and the project roles, but I would highly recommend that you take a look at our documentation, because our documentation covers the roles and descriptions and permission details, and that will help you select the appropriate roles for each user within your workspace. So workspace roles determines who can make changes to the global workspace settings, who can create and manage and share member settings for all new and existing projects, and who can create and manage default style guides for governance for your API designs. We can also access and view projects within that workspace. Project roles determine who can make changes to and manage settings to an individual project level. So who can manage member settings at an individual project level. So who can access and view those individual projects. So project roles are focused on accessing for managing settings and changes just within that individual project. So now, if you take a look at groups and teams, you may notice that groups operates a little bit differently than in the past. Groups provides a way to organize projects for easy navigation and maintenance. Think of folders. For example, you have the ability to separate public projects from internal projects. You can also separate documentation projects from API projects. Now, teams is now the feature that allows you to manage the user's access to projects. It allows organization to easily manage which users have access permission to the projects, as well as controlling those project permissions. So it simplifies the process of allowing users to collaborate on projects while giving the administrators more security over access controls. Another important concept to understand from the administrative perspective within Stoplight is the Stoplight hierarchy. So you're going to use two main user interfaces that you'll encounter within a Stoplight. At the highest level, you have your Stoplight workspace. So within your workspace, you will have one or many API style guides, projects, which can optionally be organized within a group. You can drill into the scope of creating and editing individual API projects or style guide assets, and you will transition from a Stoplight Workspace UI to a Stoplight Studio UI. So your technical team, your API design architects will likely be spending a majority of their time within the Stoplight Studio UI. But within the scope of the project of a Studio UI, you may have one or many API designs or open API specifications, one or many API models, or one or many API documentation articles. And within those, a style guide project, you may have the ability to manage rules and functions for your style guides. So when you transition between your individual Stoplight projects, you will navigate back to the Workspace UI and then back into the Studio UI within the scope of each project that you are editing. So today we're going to be focusing on the Workspace UI and how you would administer your workspace. So now I'd like to take this opportunity to hand it over to my colleague, Amy, who's going to be conducting the tour of Stoplight from the administrative perspective. So it's all yours, Amy.
Thanks, Cheryl. Hello, everyone. Let me turn off my video so that doesn't get in the way as we go through our tour here. What I would like to do is start by walking through what our workspace looks like before someone has authenticated into it. So as you navigate to your workspace, you'll see that in the bottom left-hand corner, we are not yet signed in. We have a landing page or a home page that is visible to our pre-authenticated users. We'll also have some access to our public projects. So we'll talk a little bit as we go in to our projects tab and a little bit more through a workspace that we can have public projects or we can have internal projects. And if we do have public projects, they are visible to your users in a pre-authenticated fashion. So if we click on one of these projects, what we'll have access to is the documentation. So any articles that may have been created in this project, as well as the documentation about the different methods that are involved in the APIs. You can see here there are 3 APIs within this project. So again, it allows read-only access for users who are pre-authenticated into those public projects. So I just wanted you to be aware of that and kind of see what that looks like from a pre-authenticated standpoint. So the other thing we'll do is if we click on the login, you'll notice we have a number of different options to be able to authenticate into our workspace. Now, this is not the total list, but you'll see here, these are some of the different methods that you could use to allow your users to authenticate. And I just wanted you to see this because we'll talk a little bit more about this when we get into our settings, and wanted to allow you to see just so it makes a little bit more sense as we move into an authenticated workspace. So let me grab that workspace now and we'll bring that over. So here you can see we have now authenticated into our workspace. So I'm logged in, I have access to information within my workspace, things that we didn't see before. So there's 3 different areas we're going to focus on in our tour today. So we're going to start with our top toolbars here along the top. Then we'll look at our quick access toolbar on the left-hand side. And finally, we'll wrap up with our flyout menu in the bottom left-hand corner. So a couple things just so that you're aware of. I am logged into a professional plan in my workspace, and I am logged in as the owner. So I'm going to have full access and full rights to my workspace. If you're following along in your own workspace, you may see some differences, and those will be related to your workspace role and potentially your plan. So just keep that in mind. If there's something that maybe I have access to that you don't, that would be why. All right, so as we get started, we'll start on our first tab up here in our home page. Again, this is our home page or our landing page. This is the same page we saw when we were pre-authenticated. So you have the ability to update this. It's a great way to communicate with your users about projects that maybe you're working on, APIs that might be coming down the pipe, new documentation that might be released, and you have the ability to edit all of that. And we'll look at that in a little bit more detail when we get into our settings tab. Next to our home tab is our projects tab. So this is going to be a list of all of our projects and all of our groups. So here, as we go down the left-hand side of our projects tab, we have the ability to filter based on visibility. So we could pull up our 2 public projects that we saw when we were pre-authenticated. We could look at our internal or private projects. If you know the name of the project that you're looking for, and maybe you have a long list of projects, it might be simpler just to type that name in. Otherwise, we'll just see our list of projects and groups. So you can see our groups will be collapsed to begin with, but we can drill into those just by opening up those groups. So some of the information you'll see along here, the name of the project, the nodes that are associated with it, the type of project, is it an API or a style guide project, the last time it was edited, your visibility. And kind of on the right-hand side here, you'll see that you have the ability to pin or unpin a project from your sidebar, which will be your quick access toolbar over here on the left-hand side. So if I wanted to add Dan's private project to my quick access toolbar, I could do that and that would pop right there. Again, to remove something, you just have to unpin it. Now, if we do select a specific project, you'll see we get some additional information here on the right-hand side. So this allows us the ability to learn a little bit more about this project before we dive into it. So we'll see our project name. We'll see the teams that are associated to the project. We'll learn more about what's going on within the project. So how many articles, models, APIs, and endpoints are associated with it. And then as we scroll down, we also, based on your rights, may have the ability to edit the version, which will take us directly into our Studio user interface. We can go to our docs and review those, or we can click on our project settings. So if we click on our project settings, this is where we have the ability to, if we have rights to do so, we have the ability to update our display name. We can change the icon or color, add a tagline. This is also where we would see different versions or branches of our APIs if those are listed in here. And then again, based on rights, you might have the ability to delete a project. So the other thing we'll see on the right-hand side is our members tab. So if we click on that, that's going to delve a little bit deeper into the members that are associated to this project and what their roles are. So first we'll see the project visibility. This one is public. That's why we saw it when we were pre-authenticated. We can also see the 2 teams that are associated and then what those team roles are. So we have editor and viewer roles on those 2 teams. And then you'll also get each individual member listed down here and their specific role within the project. So that's what you'll see in your window on the right-hand side. Before we leave the projects tab, we want to look at creating a new group. Very simply, you just click on that new group button. You can type in your group name, add a description if you would like, set the group's visibility. So is it internal or public? And then create a new group, and then you can add additional projects to that group or add teams to that group. So that's how you can create a new group. And then to create a new project, you can click on that new project button. That's going to take you to where you can create or import a project. So you can create a blank project or import from an open API file. Or if you are connected to a Git repo, you can pull directly from your Git repository. All you need to do is give a project name, set your visibility. And then if you want to add it to an existing group, you can select that here, and then you'll create your API. And that will have your new project will be created and will then be displayed in your projects tab. So that is a brief description of what we've got in our projects tab. Let's move over to our teams tab. So from here, we have the ability to create new teams and add members to those teams. So again, starting kind of on the left-hand side here, we can filter by all of the teams or all of the teams that we are associated with. So you have the ability to switch back and forth there. And again, if you have a number of teams and you know the team name, you can search just by entering the team name. You have the ability to multi-select teams here, and in doing that, based on your rights, you might have the ability to delete those teams. So if you do have admin or owner rights, you can do that right from here. Now, as we look at these teams, there's a number of different ways, and Cheryl kind of started to introduce this to us, but there's a number of different ways that you can group your members together into teams. So a couple options that we have here is you could group them by maybe their role within your organization. So you could have tech writers, DevOps, and marketing ops, different teams like that. And then you can apply those teams to the appropriate projects. You could also group based on maybe if you have outside of your organization, you have guests that have access to specific projects. You can create a team for that set of guests and then put them all into one group. And then again, apply that group to that team, to the appropriate projects or groups. So there's a number of different ways that you can organize your members into different teams and then apply those to your groups. But that's an option that you have, and you can begin to think through that as you start adding members and then start creating your teams. So if we click on a specific team, similar to what we saw when we were in our projects, we do get some additional information over on the right-hand side. So for starters, we can look at the overview. That's going to give us our team name. It's going to tell us who our team admin or admins are. We can have multiple admins within a team. It's also going to show us the projects that this team is associated with. So you can see that listed there as well. If we click on members, that's going to allow us to see all of the different members that are associated to this team, as well as their roles. We can invite new members to a team by typing that in, selecting them. We can set their default role within that team. So are they a member or an admin? And then send that off. And that would invite both of those members to this existing team. And then finally, under settings, we have the ability to, again, if we have the rights, to adjust the team name, add a description, update the team avatar, or delete the team. So to create a new team, all we have to do is come to the upper right-hand corner. We can click on New Team, and that will give us the ability to create a new team, add a description. And based on our plan, we might have a limit on how many teams we can add. So you'll always see where you are to that limit right here as you create a new team. All right, so moving from teams over to our members tab, this is where we have the ability to invite new members. So again, very similar to what we've seen in our teams and projects tab. On the left-hand side, we can filter a little bit by different roles. So if we want to focus on who our owners are, we can click on that. If we want to see our guests, you have the ability to filter your list from there. You can also, if you have a long list and are looking for a specific person, you can search by name. You'll notice you also have the ability to multi-select. So when you do that, and again, based on your rights, you may have the ability to change the roles. So if you have a number of people that you want to change all to a specific role, you can select that and then change their role or delete them. So it's an easier way to delete. If you have a number of members you need to delete, you can do it that way. You also have the ability to approve or deny requests. So you can see down here, we have some pending requests. So we could multi-select all of those and either approve or deny them in a bulk fashion. To add a new member, all we have to do is click the invite button. Again, we can add by member name or email address. Also, if you have a list of email addresses, they just need to be comma separated, and you can copy and paste that right into here. You'll select their default workspace role. So going back to what Cheryl was talking about at the beginning of our presentation, this is where you'll define kind of what their default role is. That might change a little bit based on the specific team or project they're in, but this is where you would set their default. And there's an easy description listed right next to it too, if you're a little confused on what those roles are. So once you have all your email addresses in there, you can send those invites, and those invites will go out to all of those members, inviting them to your workspace. All right, moving from members over to settings. Settings is where we'll spend a lot of time, especially as we're initially spinning up our workspace. So this is a place where you can come to kind of set the look and feel of your workspace, make some definitions on what is allowed or isn't allowed within your workspace, and also set up your authentication processes. So let's start at the top of this. We've got our workspace settings. So starting with our display name, you have the ability to adjust the display name. Now your display name will show in the upper left-hand corner of your workspace. I instead have a logo, so you don't see my display name, but that's where it would be if you wanted your display name to be there. You also have the ability to connect elements to your workspace, and you can do that right there through your workspace identifier. You have the ability to disable people requesting access to your workspace. So as we kind of saw in our pre-authentication window, if I didn't have rights to add, I could basically knock on the door and ask to be allowed into your workspace. Or if you disable that, then the only way for someone to be invited to your workspace is for an email to go out to them. You also have the ability to disable the daily digest email from going to your guests. So guests would be outside of your organization, and maybe they don't need to see those emails and all the changes that might be happening within your workspace. So you have the ability right through here to disable that daily digest email from going out to your guests. This is where you can also come and set up your email domain. So if you want to allow a certain email group to access your workspace without having to be approved, you can come in here and set up that email domain. As you see here, we've got one set up for stoplight.io, and anyone who accesses our workspace with that email domain will automatically be accepted in as a viewer. So that's something that you can easily set up by just clicking that add button, add your domain, set again your default workspace role. They'll be defined there for you. And then you'll have additional approved email domains listed here. So moving on to this second section here is our look and feel. So for starters, based on your plan, you may have the ability to remove stoplight branding. So if I turn off our stoplight branding, you'll see that the stoplight branding was removed from my browser tab, as well as from the bottom left-hand corner of my workspace. So if I turn that back on, you can watch it come back. So there you can see we're powered by Stoplight, and the Stoplight branding has been added to our browser tab again. We also have the ability to adjust the theme of our workspace. So you can see I have mine set to the dark, the preset dark theme. You can play around with these and see the different options that are out there. But if you're feeling a little bit more Caribbean, you could choose the sky theme. You also have the ability, if you'd like, to use your own organizational colors. So you can customize that based on your organization. You can set that, and then that will set the theme for your entire workspace. We also have the ability to select a favicon, and that's the little icon that's located right on your browser tab. So you can set that up right through here. You can also add a logo, as I did. So if you add a logo, that will show up in the upper left-hand corner of your workspace. And then you have the ability to update your landing page or our home page. So this is where we saw the page when we were in that pre-authenticated window, and then again as an authenticated user. This is where we can come and update that page to be able to share information with our users about what's going on within our workspace, what's new, what's exciting, things that they should watch out for, anything like that you can share right through your homepage or your landing page. This is written in Stoplight flavored Markdown, so you can just write that in here. Or if you'd like to start, you can use the default template, which is what we saw when we first came in. So you can come in here and edit this. And then we have the ability to preview it. So you can see, oh, look at that, made a little mistake, better come back in and fix it before I publish this. There we go, we can preview it again. And then once we save it, it would publish this to our homepage or our landing page. The only thing to keep in mind is, again, whatever you put in here is accessible to both your authenticated and pre-authenticated users. So you just want to make sure that you're not sharing anything that you would want to keep internal on this site. All right, let me cancel out of that. So that's how we can update our landing page. Moving down to our custom domain. If you have a custom domain, you can come in here and set up that CNAME so that users can access your workspace from that vanity URL. So you can just enter that there, and that will redirect your users who hit that URL to your workspace. If you do set up a custom domain, you can also enable Google Tag Manager if you have that. So you can just come in here, add your Google Tag Manager, and then you can pull analytics from your workspace as well. You can also come in and set any redirects for your custom domain so that your links don't break. You also, if you have a custom domain, have the ability to hide that sign-in button so that that's not even visible for those accessing from that vanity URL. And you also have the ability with a custom domain to utilize localization in your workspace. So the one caveat here is we do use localize. So you would need to have a subscription set up with localize, and then you could come in, apply that localize project key, and that would allow you then to do some localization and some translation within your workspace. Moving down to our integrations. So this is where we can come and set up not only how our users can authenticate to our workspace, but also if we want to connect any of our Git repos to our workspace, we can do both of those things from here. So if we come in and want to look at GitHub, for example, this is where we can enable or disable the ability to sign up, sign in, or have this icon located on our sign in page. So if we disable that, then GitHub will no longer be an option when we try to log in. And this is also where we would come to set up the integration with our GitHub repo. So we could put in our information, test that setting, and then we would be able to make changes, commit changes right from our workspace directly into our GitHub repo. So you'll notice there's also the ability for single sign-on via LDAP or SAML. So if that is how you would like to sign on, as well as Azure DevOps, you can set all of that up here. And then you have the ability to control how your users are authenticating to your workspace. And the final option you have down here at the bottom is to delete the workspace altogether. Obviously, only owners have the ability to do that, so most won't see that. So I know we covered a lot of information in the settings tab, and I know that I can sometimes talk quickly. So if you ever need to come back and maybe, in a couple months, you want to add a custom domain and you have some questions on how to do that, you don't really remember what I said, a couple months down the road, it's very easy. If you come back in and click on that flyout menu there, you have the ability right in the upper right-hand corner to learn more. And that's going to take you directly into our documentation page about setting up a custom domain. Our documentation team has done a really great job of trying to include as much information as possible, the steps to walk through. They'll also add, if necessary, any troubleshooting tips that you might come across. So it's a great way to learn more about a specific item within the settings tab and easily take you right to it without having to search too hard at all. So keep that in mind as you go through your settings tab. If you have a question on anything, you can always click on that Learn More link. All right, leaving our settings tab and heading over to our governance tab. This is where we have the ability to set up our style guides. So if we click on that menu, that's going to take us to all of the style guides. If we have any workspace specific style guides, those would be listed first. We have the ability to enable or disable right from here. There's also public style guides that you could apply to your projects within your workspace. So you can come in here, you'll notice some of them are highlighted in green. Those are the style guides that we have enabled within our workspace. So if you want to learn more about a specific style guide, you can click on the preview button. Again, that will take us out to our documentation where we can learn more about those different rules and what they do. And then we have the ability to either disable or enable a style guide based on if we want to apply that to our different projects. You also have the ability, if you so choose, to allow your admins and editors to disable the default style guides within their projects. So if you have a number of style guides and you typically want those to apply to everything, but maybe you've got one project where one of those style guides doesn't really apply. By enabling this, then you could allow those admins or editors to disable that style guide right within their project. So it's up to you on how you want to be able to manage that. All right, moving from governance over to activity. When you click on activity, you can think of that as an audit log for your workspace. So you can come in here, you have the ability to filter based on some different, if you're looking for something specific, you can choose that, or obviously it will default to all. You can look at the time date stamp if you're looking for when something might have changed. You can come do some research on that and learn a little bit more. So that's all under your activities tab, and that would be specific to your workspace. Now your automations tab is for those workspaces that are connected to a Git repo. So my workspace is not connected to a Git repo, so I have nothing to show here. But if you did, this is where you would come to see your webhook events and other logs that relate to your connection with your Git repo. So if you're having issues pushing or committing anything, you can come in here, see what's going on, and hopefully troubleshoot that issue. And then the final tab we have along the top is our billing tab. This is going to give us a summary of our workspace. So as you can see, it will define the plan that we're on. Towards the bottom of the page, you'll also see if you have any limits. So if you have a number of limits, a limit of members, excuse me, then you'll see where you are to that limit. Same with guests, as well as teams and projects. So you'll always know where you are to your limit. And if you need to expand that, then you can reach out to your sales team or to your customer success manager. All right, so that takes us through all of the tabs along the top. I know that that is a ton of information, but Dan, Cheryl, any questions that we should go over as a group?
So we got a great question by from James, who asked the question related to being able to edit members and teams. And I just wanted to, give kind of a perspective. So the Teams feature that Stoplight released recently, when we released that, we pre-created a number of teams for you. And there's two ways to be able to edit those teams, to be able to edit the members. One way is if you are a team admin, you can add and remove users to those teams as you need to. But if you're trying to edit all of your teams en masse, the only workspace role permission that can edit all teams is the workspace owner. So in James's case, if he is trying to edit all the teams and do kind of a team cleanup, so to speak, the best practice would be for James to be made a workspace owner, either long-term or short-term, and then James will be able to edit those teams and add and remove members as necessary.
Perfect. Great question, James, and Dan, thanks for answering that for us. All right, so as we transition over to our quick access toolbar, first thing I want to look at is the logo, or if you have your display name. If you click on that, that will take you back to our home page or our landing page. So again, it's the same as clicking the home button here. So that clicking on your display name or logo, as well as the home button here, will all take you back to the same place. So that will take you to your landing page and allow you to kind of start over. Next to that, we've got the little plus button. If we click on that, that is our quick access to be able to create or import a project. So if you remember when we were in the projects tab and we clicked on new project, this is the same exact window that we saw. So it's just, again, a quick access way to be able to create a project. So we can create a blank project, import from an open API file, or from our Git repo, same process. We just create a project name, set our visibility if we want to add it to a group, and then we can create the project. Below that is our search function. So if you're looking for something specific, you can come in here and search for that, and that will pull up anything that matches that search function, and you can drill right into it from your search feature. We talked about the home button, so I won't go into that again. We also have the Explore feature. This is a great tool, especially if you're new to a workspace, to learn kind of what the projects are that are within the workspace, what's maybe going on with them. It's just a great way to learn more about what's within your studio and what is being worked on and what you can learn more. You can see you can click on a specific thing, read the documentation that is associated with that project, delve even a little bit more into each one of the APIs associated with that project. So again, it's a great way for your users all within one window to be able to see and learn more about what's going on within your workspace. And then below the Explore button, we have proposals. Cheryl talked a little bit about this in the beginning, but this, again, if you are connected to a Git repo, which I am not, but if you are, this is where you would see any of the changes that would be taking place within your Git repo. So you can kind of manage from a high level what's going on, what changes have been made, validate that you won't have anything that might cause a kind of a ripple down effect if you make a change in one area. So it's a great place to come just to kind of oversee your changes to your Git repos. All right, and then below that is where we have quick access to any of the projects that we have pinned. So we learned how to pin a project in our projects tab, but if we click on that specific project, that's going to take us into the project itself. So here you'll see, again, we have access to all of the articles associated with this project. We can also delve into the documentation about each of our different methods, be able to read and learn more about what's going on within the APIs that are associated with this project. You also may have, based on your rights, 3 buttons along the top here. So I'm going to kind of work backwards. I'm going to start on the right-hand side in our settings tab. So if you remember, this is the same screen we saw if we were in the projects tab, and in the bottom right-hand corner, clicked on edit project settings. It's going to take you to the same place. You just have access to it right from here without having to go back to your projects tab. So here you can update the display name, make any changes that you want to with the project name. Again, validate your versions or branches. And then if you have the rights, you can delete the project right from here. You also have the ability right from within your project to share the project. So if you notice there's someone from your team or maybe a new team that needs to be added, you don't have to go back out to the projects tab to do that. You can do that right from here. You have the same access that you would from the projects tab. And then finally, the edit button. So when we click on the edit button, this is where we are shifting from our Workspace UI to the Studio UI. And Cheryl shared a great little image of that during the PowerPoint presentation. So now we've kind of shifted over to our Workspace, our Studio user interface. I'm not going to spend a lot of time in here, but I'll give you just the nickel tour of just some of the functionality that you've got within your Studio interface. So we'll just go over some of these buttons along the top here. We have our hamburger menu, so we can go back to our Workspace. We can set our preference. So if you remember when we were in the settings tab, we had the ability to set the theme, and that would apply to our entire Workspace. The preference here, if I wanted to switch this to dark, will only apply to me. So this would be a personal theme for when I'm working within my Studio interface. So that's something that your users can adjust to whatever is easiest for them and their eyes as they're working. You can download a project zip file or export a spectral file from the hamburger menu. You have the ability to search. So again, if you're looking for something specific, you can search for it. In the plus button, you have the ability to add new artifacts to this project. So APIs, endpoints, models, articles, anything like that. You can create a table of contents. You can also import different style guides. So all of that can be done from the plus button. This is where if we've made changes to a project, we have the ability to publish, or if you're connected to a Git repo, you might see commit listed there. So that basically allows you to publish your changes or commit those to your repo. Here you would see the project name, as well as if there were multiple branches or versions, those would be listed here. So you can switch between those. And then finally, from within the Studio interface, you also have the ability to invite members. So again, if you notice that you need a new team added to this project to help progress it or to review something, you can do that right from here without having to go back to your Workspace and add them and then come back into the Studio interface. So the second row of buttons we've got here is just going to define what's going on within the project. So you can see we have 3 APIs associated with this project. In our Docs tab, we have the ability to create new articles, markdown articles, and those would be stored within our Docs. Our Files tab will contain everything, all artifacts that are associated with this project. And then under the Styles tab is where we have the ability to see what style guides have been enabled. And if we have the rights, we can manage those style guides right from here. On the right-hand side of our screen, you can see this is where we can switch from our form to our code view. So depending on how you like to edit your API, you can do that through here. You also have the ability to preview. So as your writing code and documentation is getting created for you, you can see that right here. Or you can switch over to your warnings and errors. This would show any warnings or errors that are associated based on those style guides that are applied to your project. So that's where you'll see those listed on the right-hand side if you click on the warnings tab. So again, we just scratched the surface of the things that you can do within your Studio, but wanted to kind of give you just a high-level overview of what's in here before we head back to our Workspace. All right.
Hey, Amy, I'll mention also that we actually have a recently completed Training Thursday that's a deeper dive into the Stoplight Studio itself. So I will post a link to the video recording that's a deeper dive into the Stoplight Studio.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Dan. Yeah, Cheryl just did a deep dive into that last month. So yeah, if you'd like to learn more about that, I highly encourage you to check out that link that Dan's going to post for us. All right, so let's head back to our main page. So we've talked about our different access points, how we can get into our different projects from our quick access toolbar. The last thing from our quick access standpoint is the ability to invite users to our workspace. So again, we can do that right from here. If we know their email address, we can enter that in, or their name, select their workspace role, and then send that invite out so they can join our workspace. All right, finally, we're going to look at what is in our flyout menu. So in here, we have the ability to update some of our personal account settings. So we can add a username, have avatar URL can be added there. If we want to associate an additional email address, we can do that through here. We also have the ability to opt out of the daily digest if we would like to right from here. This is where you can update your password and connect any additional accounts to your workspace if you would like to from there. We also have the ability to access our product documentation. So like we saw in our settings tab, this is going to take us right into our product documentation and without even really having to leave our workspace. So if we need to look for something specific, we could just type in what it is we're looking for. If you remember earlier, Cheryl was telling us about the different workspace roles and how we can learn more about that. Well, all I had to do was come in here, type roles, and that's going to take me right to where I can learn about the different roles within the workspace and what each one of those users might have access to. And you'll see on the left-hand side, you can also delve into more information right from here. So again, our documentation team has done a great job of trying to make sure that information about our workspace is accessible and easy to learn. So you can hit that up right from there. You can also access the Stoplight blog. So if you'd like to learn more about Stoplight or API first design, you can do that right through the blog. You can also access help documents, so additional troubleshooting information and helpful articles that may just enlighten you a little bit more about how to use your workspace and how to collaborate better. You can find that within your help docs. We'll come back to our contact support, but you also have access to release notes and the roadmap. So all of that is easily accessible right from within your flyout menu. And then for those of you who have a paid plan, you also have the ability to contact support. So when you click on that, you'll get this pop-up box. Now, if this is the first time you have tried to contact support, you will get an email to set up that account. And then anytime going forward, once your account is set up, all you have to do is click here, and that will take you to the support portal where you can log in. From there, you can review additional documentation and information. You can access all of your existing tickets. Support cases that have been entered, you'll have access to those, as well as creating a new support case. So all of that can be done right from within your workspace. So that kind of wraps up our tour of the Stoplight workspace. I hope you found that helpful. And if there's any additional questions, feel free to pop that in the Q&A. Otherwise, I will turn it back over to Cheryl to wrap us up.
Thank you, Amy. That was very helpful. So before we wrap up, I'd like to quickly review a few of the Stoplight subscription plan options. So you can leverage a selection of software as a service subscription options fully hosted by Stoplight for your API design, mocking, documentation, and governance building blocks. There is a Stoplight's free plan that allows you to begin exploring Stoplight's design first features and allows you to collaborate with up to 3 users in one project within your workspace. And if you move up to the Stoplight Starter subscription plan, your subscription includes 5 users that you can collaborate up to 10 projects, and it unlocks an approved email domain and custom workspace domain features within your workspace. And of course, you also have the ability to purchase individual user licenses as needed. By leveling up to the Stoplight Professional subscription plan, your subscription includes 10 users. You get up to 100 projects, 50 guests, as well as 20 teams. So again, you can purchase individual user licenses as needed. And with the Stoplight Professional, you gain the ability to invite external guests to your Stoplight project so that they can view your internal API design specifications and API documentation articles from behind an authenticated session. Stoplight Professional also unlocks additional single sign-on options like SAML and LDAP. You also have the additional Git provider options as Bitbucket Server and Azure DevOps. Custom workspace domain features within your workspace, which will allow you to use your host name for your Stoplight hosted API design and documentation. And lastly, the Stoplight's enterprise subscription plan. So that gives you 25 users, unlimited projects, unlimited external guests, as well as unlimited teams. So once again, you can purchase individual user licenses as needed there. And Stoplight's enterprise subscription also gives you the ability to access volume license discounts, as well as additional invoicing flexibility with custom payment terms. And you have enhanced onboarding and training engagement sessions with us, the customer success team, and enhanced priority within your support cases. So this wraps up our training session for today. And if you mark your calendars for the next Thursday training session, we will be having that on January 12th. It's a live training Thursdays, and those are scheduled the second Thursdays of each month. Now note that there will not be a training on December or in December due to the holidays. So be sure to check out the Learn with Stoplight webinars playlist. For those recordings, we have those posted in the training sessions, and you can find them in YouTube by searching Learn with Stoplight webinar. And we're going to stay on for just a little bit longer and answer any additional questions that are posted in the QA Zoom. So thank you for your time and have a great day.
And we do have a couple questions in the Q&A. We have we have many query parameter dependencies in our APIs. Are you developing something for this? In the 3.x OAS, there is something like any of. For example, the telephone or mobile number must be passed as a query parameter.
Yeah, we're working on getting the answer to that one, Bailey. I think that, the answer is yes. We're planning on enhancing support for Open API specification for any of, and I'm looking to try to understand from our probably deeper level experts what the best answer to this particular question is.
Sounds good. And did we answer the best way to document an API for the live and development environment?
About to hit the send button on the answer to that one.
All right. And also, guys, if you have additional questions, you can also go to our community channel at community.stoplight.io and ask your question there.